Sometimes they poured into slightly larger rivers. The state of Pennsylvania had to tell 325,000 people who drew their drinking water from the Monongahela to stop drinking the water a few years ago because it had become so polluted. Sometimes they do things like concentrate it down a little bit and spread it on the roads because it's briny, and so it melts the snow or whatever. You can figure out, you know, what happens with that. Sometimes they hold it in vast tanks because they don't know what else to do with it. Sometimes they inject it back underground in so-called injection wells. On December 31st of last year, they managed to trigger a couple of fairly large earthquakes in Ohio by pushing all this water back underground into an area with active faults. Along with the trouble with the water, it turns out that you can cause a great deal of trouble with the air around as well. The dirtiest air in the country 2 years ago, the EPA said, was in Sublette County, Wyoming? Yeah. Sublette County, Wyoming, a place with no stoplights, but a lot of fracking wells.
One of the reasons there's so much information about this now is because we've been able to hold it off, and because of a whole bunch of things that have happened since then. You guys have heard of fracking. Like, we didn't even hear of it before the landmen were working in our neighborhoods. I used to always do a forum. How many people here are large landowners, 50 acres or more? How many people are from industry? They don't usually raise their hand. Okay, so when I first started doing forums, I was running around with these great photos of drilling in Wyoming and other places, open landscapes, not on top of mountains. And the reaction was, oh, that can't happen here, there's mountains and trees. But then I found these photos. This is a photograph of Allegheny National Forest before gas drilling. That's a photo after. And this is a 40-acre spacing units, which would be legal in New York State. I don't know what your spacing unit size here is in Vermont. Then I got a photographer, go to the next photo, named Henry Fair. And the rest of the photos are all his photos. And we went up in an airplane. So I can't take credit for the photo, but I held the window open while we were flying. In the New York State regulation, you take out this 2-volume book. It has all these parameters, and in there it says, due to the nature of gas drilling, there's no cumulative impact. Well, I think there's cumulative impact with gas drilling. You can see the line that's going through that looks like that's a swap. That's the gathering pipeline. There's all sorts of access roads. You have the well pits. The other thing, when you fly over a gas patch that you notice as you're flying up to it, you start seeing the gas rigs, and then all of a sudden there's gravel banks everywhere because they have to build all these access roads. So then they have to put in gravel banks everywhere to build those roads. So New York, because we had this outdated document that didn't cover the problems with gas drilling, we got the governor to do a supplemental generic environmental impact statement. So to redo the regulations in New York. And it's created a de facto, we don't actually have a moratorium.
Water Act, which is looking at groundwater and setting standards based on health standards that regulate, in particular in this scenario, underground injections, the UIC program. Then you'd have what goes up into the air, right? We saw, first of all, just the activity of trucks coming in and out. You've got emissions of VOCs, volatile organic compounds, evaporating as we were talking about. A lot of nasty chemicals that are regulated under the Clean Air Act. I'll come back to that in a minute. Then you have sheer water use. We talked about, what, 4.5 million gallons, I think, in a typical well. So you have that volume just taken out of the local water supplies, as well as you have, like we saw there, potential for spillage and direct ejections or emissions into our waterways. And that would be regulated under federal law and the Clean Water Act. Again, notice I said would be. And then finally, you have the actual stuff that you leave in the land. You saw disposal, which would come under RCRA, the Resource Conservation and Recovery Act.